Good Thursday morning prospect. It's already been a busy morning for me, so I'm running late. Came across something that really moved me, and there's more of it and more to it than I want to get into in a daily blog. But first thing that spoke to me was that we are not called to keep the rules. We are called to glorify God and enjoy His presence. I am not advocating disobeying rules. I'm saying there are way too many people who get wrapped up in obeying the rules. And I am reminded, and I have to be very careful because there are reasons rules are there. But my father worked in the electronics. He had a high school education, but he'd spent years doing and building things for different companies. And it's sort of a joke, but it's not, because Georgia Tech had my dad on speed dial because they would come up with something and they couldn't figure out how to do it, and he figured out how to make things work. And part of the reason he was able to do that is that he had never read the engineering books that said it couldn't be done that way. And so sometimes you can do things that can't be done. But in Christian life, if we get focused on the thou shalt nots and we start beating people up who do the thou shalt nots, then we've forgotten that God created man to glorify Him. And I have said a couple of times, I actually love the Westminster Shorter Catechism. What is the chief end of man? The chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy His presence forever. The chief end of man is not keeping the Sabbath or honoring your father and mother or even not killing. Those are all parts of the whole, but they aren't the whole. The whole is glorifying God and enjoying His presence forever. And in doing that, I think these things are connected, and you may think I have lost my mind, but I know churches who are legalistic. One comes to my mind right now. I'm not going to call their name. But their attitude is, we love the sinner and hate the sin. And I'm just going to look at you and tell you, no, you don't, because you're a bunch of hateful, mean people. And if you think that that is how we should act, you don't understand God's love. Jesus hung on the cross, had been nailed to a tree, was dying, while people jeered at Him and made fun and mocked Him. And what was His prayer to the Father? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I know myself well enough to know that if I were dying on a cross and people were mocking me, I would be vindictive. In fact, I would be, let's make sure your grandmother was never born. And I know it's wrong, but I'm being honest. And if you think that I'm over-exaggerating my attitude towards loving God and not judging. First of all, what did Jesus say in Matthew 25? He says, there will come a judgment, and the judge will separate the sheep from the goats. And those on the left hand, he will say, come, enter into your reward, for you fed the hungry and clothed the naked and visited the sick and those in prison. And actually, you fed me when I was hungry. You clothed me when I was naked. You visited me when I was sick. This is Jesus speaking in the first person. And even the confused people who are about to enter their glory goes, Lord, when did we see you naked? When did we see you hungry? When did we see you in prison? And Jesus' response is, when you did it for the least of these, you did it for me. And if you want an even better, Luke 14 says, when you throw a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, since they do not have the means to repay you. For you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Don't forget the two great commands, and they're commands, folks. They're not suggestions. It's not optional. The first and greatest command is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul and all your strength. That covers all your being. Love God. And the second is like the first, love your neighbor as yourself. It doesn't say love your neighbor if they're nice. It does not say love your neighbor if they attend the same church that you do. It doesn't say love your neighbor if you are part of the same lodge. It says love your neighbor. And it's a command. And we are called to take care of our sisters and brothers in this world. And we miss those little opportunities. You do not have to feed the whole world. You don't even have to try to feed the whole world. But you better try to feed the little boy or little girl down the street whose parents have lost their jobs through no fault of their own, or whose parents are just sorry as all get out. There's not a category for feeding the hungry if they deserve to be fed. I have been talking at length about getting back to being the church. And part of my reason for talking is that I'm out of patience. And when I say that, I do not mean that I'm going to be stupid. But I see people hurting every day. And you do too. And as the church here in Oak Hill, called Prospect, we are going to transform the world for Jesus Christ. And we are going to make disciples. And as long as I have a voice in it, we're going to do it by loving our neighbors. And we're going to do it by inviting I'm not using this word in the political sense it's taken on. We're going to invite the undesirables. We're going to invite those who society has said aren't worthy, because that is precisely who Jesus died for, those of us who aren't worthy. Prospect, I apologize for being preachy as much as I have been today, but I feel God moving, telling us that it is time for us to get moving. The wagons need to be hitched to the team, and we need to be moving forward. I love you all. I'm still of the opinion, if you are not comfortable, I'm not talking to you yet. But I am talking to those of you who are ready to move ahead. God bless you all. Thank you for being the church.